My beloved child. Last night, while the world grew quiet and most hearts settled into sleep, something happened that no one expected. A photograph rested in someone's hands. It was your photograph. The room was calm, the conversation unhurried, yet there was a feeling in the air that neither person could explain. Sometimes the smallest moments carry the greatest meaning, and this was one of them. Their brother studied your face far longer than anyone imagined he would. He did not rush. He did not laugh. He simply looked, as though he were trying to recognize something that words could not easily describe. Then, after a long silence, he quietly spoke. The moment those words left his lips, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Not because they were loud. Not because they were dramatic. But because they revealed something that had been hiding in plain sight. And strangely, the one sitting beside him could not stop thinking about what had just been said. If you have spent nights wondering whether your kindness has ever been noticed, whether your quiet prayers have disappeared into silence, or whether your heart has been misunderstood more times than it has been appreciated, this moment may speak to you more deeply than you realize. For a long time, you have carried strength that few people ever acknowledged. You learned how to smile while carrying disappointment. You chose patience when frustration would have been easier. You continued believing that goodness still mattered, even when life gave you every reason to become discouraged. Those choices left a mark. Not always where you expected. But they did. Sometimes people recognize the beauty of a soul only after they stop looking for perfection and begin looking for peace. That is exactly where this conversation began to unfold. Yet that was not the moment that changed everything. Because after looking at your picture once more, their brother leaned back with a thoughtful expression. His eyes never left your face. It was almost as though he was remembering someone, or perhaps recognizing a quality that had become rare in today's world. The silence became heavier. No one wanted to interrupt it. Then he quietly asked a question. It was such a simple question that it almost went unnoticed. Yet that single question caused the other person to hesitate before answering. Why? Because deep inside, they already knew the answer. They had simply been afraid to admit it. There are moments in life when another person's honesty becomes a mirror. Not a mirror that reflects appearance, but one that reflects truth. Sometimes it takes someone outside the situation to notice what those closest to it have overlooked. This was becoming one of those moments. And without realizing it, the conversation slowly turned toward you. Not toward old mistakes. Not toward rumors. Not toward assumptions. Instead, they began speaking about the quiet qualities that cannot be captured in ordinary conversations. The kind of peace that someone brings into a room. The gentle strength hidden behind tired eyes. The patience that survives seasons of waiting. These are gifts that often remain invisible until the right person notices them. Perhaps you have wondered why your season has felt so long. Why doors seemed slow to open. Why certain answers arrived later than you hoped. Sometimes delay is not denial. Sometimes it allows hearts to grow ready for truths they would have ignored before. And this conversation was unfolding at exactly the right time. If this message resonates with you, remember this. Not every meaningful change begins with a grand announcement. Some begin with a quiet observation. A thoughtful pause. A sentence spoken almost in passing. That is often how lasting transformation begins. Yet what happened next was never meant to be revealed so quickly. Because after listening carefully, your person slowly turned back toward the photograph. And with a voice that sounded very different from before. They responded to their brother with words that no one in that room expected to hear. Those words would become the beginning of a completely different chapter. For several quiet moments, neither of them spoke again. The photograph remained between them, resting on the table as though it had become part of the conversation itself. Outside, the night carried on without interruption, but inside that room, something gentle had begun to awaken. Your person finally broke the silence. "I don't know why," they whispered, "but every time I look at this face, I feel calmer." Their brother did not answer immediately. Instead, he nodded slowly, almost as though he had been waiting for those words. Then he offered an observation that carried more wisdom than anyone expected. "Some people spend years searching for excitement," he said softly. "But the relationships that endure are often built on something much quieter, the feeling of coming home." Those words settled into the room. Your person lowered their eyes, reflecting on memories they had carefully pushed aside. Small moments. Gentle conversations. Unexpected laughter. The comfort of simply knowing someone cared. Memories they once considered ordinary suddenly carried a new significance. Have you ever noticed how the heart remembers peace long after it forgets arguments? There are moments that leave no photographs, no grand celebrations, and no applause. Yet they become the moments we treasure most. Perhaps that is why your presence has continued to echo in places you cannot see. Not because everything was perfect, but because something sincere was planted there. And sincerity has a remarkable way of remaining alive, even through long seasons of silence. Their brother leaned forward once more. "There is something else," he said. "I couldn't explain it at first. But when I looked into those eyes..." He paused. Not searching for words. Choosing them carefully. They don't look like someone trying to prove their worth. They look like someone who has carried more than people realize, and still chose kindness. The room grew still again. Your person did not defend themselves. They did not change the subject. Instead, they quietly admitted something they had never said aloud. "I think I've misunderstood them." Those 6 words carried the weight of many months. Sometimes healing begins not with dramatic apologies, but with quiet honesty. One truthful sentence can accomplish what endless explanations never could. If you have felt overlooked, if your patience has been mistaken for weakness, if your gentle heart has been underestimated, do not believe that those qualities have gone unnoticed forever. There are seasons when understanding arrives slowly. Not because it is absent, but because hearts often need time to become ready for it. This conversation was becoming that moment. Yet this was not the deepest realization. Not yet. Because after reflecting quietly, their brother asked a question that no one had expected. If they walked away tomorrow, what would you truly lose? The question lingered. No immediate answer came. Your person looked down at your photograph once again. This time, they were no longer studying your face. They were remembering how you made them feel. Safe. Accepted. Seen. There is a difference between admiring someone and recognizing their value. That difference can take months. Sometimes years. To fully understand. And perhaps that is why this night mattered so much. It was no longer about appearances. It was about perspective. About realizing that the qualities people overlook today often become the very ones they long for tomorrow. If this sounds familiar, hold on to hope. Not because every story unfolds the same way, but because honest reflection has the power to change even long-held assumptions. The conversation continued, growing quieter with each passing minute. Then something unexpected happened. Their brother reached toward the photograph one last time. Pointed to one small detail that had escaped everyone's attention. And said, "I think this is what you've been missing all along." Your person's expression changed instantly. Because in that single observation, they suddenly saw something they had never seen before. Your person looked back at the photograph, searching for the small detail their brother had noticed. At first, they could not see it. The picture had been viewed many times before. Nothing about it appeared different. Yet sometimes what changes is not the image. It is the heart of the one looking at it. Their brother smiled gently. It isn't the way they look, he said. It's the peace in their expression. Those words settled deeply. Not because they answered every question, but because they revealed one that had never been asked. When was the last time your person truly looked beyond appearances? When had they last paused long enough to notice the quiet strength someone carries instead of the image they present to the world? For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was no longer uncomfortable. It had become thoughtful. Your person began remembering things they had almost forgotten. The conversations where you listened without asking for recognition. The encouragement you gave when your own heart needed encouragement. The patience you showed when life felt uncertain. None of those moments had seemed extraordinary at the time. Yet together, they formed a picture far more meaningful than any photograph ever could. This is often how understanding arrives. Not like a sudden storm, but like the sunrise. Quiet. Steady. Impossible to stop once it begins. If you have ever wondered whether your unseen efforts mattered, whether your gentle spirit was overlooked, whether your prayers were heard even when nothing seemed to change, remember this truth. The seeds planted with love often grow beneath the surface long before anyone notices the first sign of life. And tonight, something beneath the surface was beginning to bloom. Their brother leaned back and folded his hands. I've met many people, he said calmly. Some impress you for a moment. But others leave you feeling lighter after they leave. He glanced once more at your picture. I think they're one of those people. Your person lowered their head. The words stirred memories that refused to remain hidden. Not dramatic memories. Simple ones. Moments filled with kindness. Quiet loyalty. Gentle understanding. The kind of moments that rarely receive applause, yet become unforgettable with time. Sometimes we don't recognize a blessing while we're living inside it. Only after distance creates silence do we begin to hear what our hearts were trying to tell us all along. That realization brought both comfort and regret. But regret does not always signal an ending. Sometimes it marks the beginning of wisdom. And wisdom opens doors that pride could never unlock. If this message resonates with you, perhaps your own season has felt longer than expected. Perhaps you have questioned why certain answers have taken so much time. Do not mistake stillness for absence. Many meaningful changes begin quietly, long before they become visible. This conversation was proving exactly that. Then their brother asked one final question. It was gentle. Almost whispered. Have you noticed that every time someone speaks about them, your entire expression changes? Your person froze. They had never realized it. Not once. They tried to dismiss the thought. But the silence that followed answered the question more honestly than words ever could. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Your person reached for their phone. Not to send a message. Not yet. Instead, they opened something they had not looked at for a very long time. As the screen slowly lit up, their brother quietly recognized what it was. The moment he did, he looked at your person with surprise. Because what appeared on that screen revealed a hidden truth that had been there all along. A truth your person was finally ready to face. The glow of the screen filled the quiet room. Neither of them hurried to speak. Sometimes the most meaningful moments arrive without a single raised voice. Your person slowly scrolled through what had been tucked away for so long. There were old conversations. Simple messages. Kind words exchanged on ordinary days. Nothing dramatic. Nothing extraordinary to anyone looking from the outside. Yet together they told a story that had never truly ended. Their brother watched in silence. Then he asked softly. Why did you keep all of this? Your person stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. I don't think I ever meant to let it go. The admission surprised even them. Some truths remain hidden, not because we are trying to deceive others, but because we have not yet found the courage to say them aloud. This was one of those truths. Every message carried a reminder of how naturally your conversations had flowed. How easily understanding had replaced explanation. How often you offered encouragement without expecting anything in return. There was no need for grand promises. The smallest acts of kindness had spoken the loudest. Have you ever noticed that the people who leave the deepest impression are often the ones who never try to impress anyone? Their presence becomes unforgettable because it feels genuine. That was what your person was beginning to understand. Their brother pointed toward one particular message. You answered this within minutes, he said. But look at what they wrote. Your person read the words again. This time more slowly. The message was simple. It offered reassurance during a difficult day. No attention was drawn to your own struggles. No request for recognition. Just quiet encouragement. Their brother smiled gently. That tells me something. Your person looked up. What? He answered with calm certainty. When someone consistently brings peace instead of pressure, they become difficult to replace. The room fell silent again. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because those words reached places that logic never could. Perhaps you have spent far too much time believing that your quiet nature made you invisible. Perhaps you wondered whether your patience had been mistaken for weakness. Yet hearts often remember peace long after they forget excitement. They remember who listened. Who stayed kind. Who remained steady when life became uncertain. Those qualities rarely demand attention. But they quietly earn lasting respect. If this message feels familiar, let it remind you that gentle hearts often leave the deepest footprints. Not immediately, but faithfully. As the night continued, your person placed the phone face down on the table. Their eyes no longer carried uncertainty. Instead, there was reflection. The kind that changes future decisions. Their brother noticed it immediately. I've never seen you this quiet, he said. Your person smiled faintly. I've been asking the wrong questions. Instead of wondering what was missing, they had begun wondering what they had almost overlooked. That single shift changed everything. Because when perspective changes, the future often follows. Yet the evening was not over. One final memory surfaced. It wasn't triggered by the photograph. It wasn't triggered by the messages. It came from something your brother remembered hearing months earlier. A sentence you had spoken without realizing anyone else was listening. At the time, no one reacted. It seemed ordinary. Almost forgettable. But tonight, those words returned with unexpected clarity. Their brother slowly looked toward your person and said, I think I finally understand what they meant that day. The expression on your person's face changed instantly. Because they knew exactly which sentence he was talking about. And once those forgotten words were spoken aloud, there would be no pretending they had never been heard. Your person drew a slow breath. The room felt quieter than before, as though even the night was waiting to hear what would be said next. Their brother spoke carefully, unwilling to rush a memory that had quietly gathered meaning over time. Do you remember the day they said, I believe the right things never need to be forced. What is genuine finds its way with patience. The words lingered in the air. Your person closed their eyes for a brief moment. I remember, they whispered. But I didn't understand them then. How often does wisdom arrive before we are ready to receive it? Sometimes a sentence seems ordinary when we first hear it. Months later, after life has softened our certainty, those same words return carrying an entirely different meaning. That was exactly what was happening now. Your person realized that you had never tried to convince anyone to stay. You had never demanded constant reassurance. You had never asked to be chosen through pressure or fear. Instead, you trusted that honesty, kindness, and time would reveal what truly mattered. At the time, that quiet confidence had been misunderstood. Now, it appeared remarkably strong. Their brother looked at the photograph once more. "I used to think they were simply patient," he said. "But now I think it was something deeper. It was faith. Not the kind that guarantees every outcome. The kind that allows a person to remain gracious even when the future is uncertain." That realization settled gently into your person's heart. They began to see that real strength is often quiet. It does not compete for attention. It does not rush to defend itself. It remains steady, believing that truth becomes clearer with time. If you have spent seasons waiting, wondering whether your quiet efforts have mattered, remember this. Patience is not empty waiting. It is choosing hope while life is still writing the next chapter. Your story has not been measured only by the moments everyone noticed. It has also been shaped by the unseen choices, the prayers whispered in silence, the kindness offered without applause, the courage to keep your heart open after disappointment. Those moments carry lasting weight. As the conversation continued, your person reached for the photograph again. This time, they did not study your face. Instead, they smiled. It was not a smile of certainty. It was the smile of someone beginning to understand. Their brother noticed. "There it is," he said quietly. "What?" "The expression I haven't seen in a long time." Your person looked puzzled. "You've stopped looking at the past with regret. You've started looking at the future with hope." The words were simple. Yet they unlocked something that had remained closed for far too long. For the first time that evening, your person admitted something that had been hidden even from themselves. "I don't think I was afraid of being wrong." They paused. "I think I was afraid of realizing what I almost lost." No one answered. Some confessions deserve silence because silence allows truth to settle where arguments never can. If this message has stirred something within you, perhaps it is because your own heart has been carrying quiet hope for longer than anyone knows. Hope is never wasted. It shapes us, strengthens us, and prepares us for moments we cannot yet see. But the night still held one final surprise. Just as the conversation seemed to be ending, a phone resting on the table suddenly lit up. No one had touched it. A new message had arrived. Your person glanced at the screen. Then looked at their brother in complete disbelief. Because the name that appeared there was the one they had silently hoped to see. And before either of them could decide what to do next, another message appeared beneath the first. Your person remained still. For a brief moment, they simply looked at the screen, almost afraid that moving too quickly might disturb the quiet significance of the moment. Their brother noticed the change in their expression. "What does it say?" he asked gently. Your person smiled, though there was a trace of emotion in their eyes. "It isn't a long message," they replied. "It's thoughtful." They unlocked the phone and read the words again, more slowly this time. The message did not contain dramatic declarations. It did not attempt to erase the past. Instead, it carried something far more meaningful. A sincere hope that life had been treating you well. A quiet wish for peace. And a simple acknowledgement that some people continue to matter, even after time has passed. Their brother nodded with quiet understanding. "That tells me more than you realize." Your person looked up. "How?" "Because people rarely reach out just to revisit yesterday. They reach out when something inside them has changed." Those words settled deeply. Not as a promise, but as a reminder that growth often begins long before anyone speaks about it. Have you ever noticed that healing is usually quiet? It does not announce itself. It arrives through small choices. Gentle reflections. Honest conversations. And unexpected moments that invite us to see familiar people with fresh eyes. Perhaps that is why this evening unfolded exactly as it did. A photograph led to a conversation. A conversation uncovered forgotten memories. Those memories revealed quiet truths. And those truths opened the door to something neither of them had expected. Your person placed the phone down for a moment. They were no longer thinking about what had gone wrong. Instead, they were reflecting on what could still be made right. Their brother smiled. "I've been waiting for you to reach this place." What place? The place where gratitude becomes stronger than regret. Those words brought an unexpected sense of peace. Because regret often asks us to remain trapped in yesterday. Gratitude quietly reminds us that tomorrow still holds possibilities. If this message feels close to your own journey, let it encourage you. Not every meaningful chapter begins with certainty. Some begin with a single honest conversation. Some begin when someone finally sees your quiet strength. And some begin when hearts become willing to understand what they once overlooked. As the night grew later, your person looked once more at your photograph. This time there was no confusion. No hesitation. Only quiet appreciation. Their brother noticed and asked one final question. "So, what are you going to do now?" Your person did not answer immediately. Instead, they looked out the window, reflecting on everything that had unfolded. Then, with calm confidence, they picked up the phone again. Their thumb hovered above the keyboard. Not searching for the perfect words. Searching for truthful ones. Because they had finally realized that meaningful connections are not strengthened by impressive speeches. They are strengthened by sincerity. Just before they began typing, they turned toward their brother and quietly said, "You were right. I wasn't seeing them clearly before." Their brother smiled warmly. "I wasn't trying to change your mind. I was simply hoping you'd see what had been there all along." And in that quiet exchange, something shifted. Not because every question had been answered, but because understanding had finally replaced uncertainty. The first words began to appear on the screen. A thoughtful message. An honest beginning. One written with humility instead of pride. With hope instead of hesitation. And with a heart finally ready to speak.